Well, thank you, Terry and Arkia. I think you're going to get a lot out of this because I know I'm very impressed with what Frank has done. So just I'll give you a little bit of background about Frank, and then I wanted him to share some very personal interests with you. So Frank, I understand that you had a background in organizational development, which is very helpful in the field that you're doing. And I know that you have a passion for serving older adults that you're going to talk about in a minute. And I think I like your phrase that you're leading the village is a job I've been preparing for my whole life, but didn't know it. You just didn't know you were going to be a village. So and he is a dog owner who walks his remaining only dog through those nice parks in Woodley Park and Cleveland Park area. So tell him a little bit more about yourself because I think it's a good story.
Sure. Thanks, Mary Jo. I came to the village because my mother was living with us in my family, and we had moved back to the DC community from Nova Scotia, where she had joined us. And she hadn't lived in Washington, D.C. since 1952. She had lived in Northern Virginia, but frankly, she had outlived most of her friends, and she found herself living with us in Woodley Park, DC. And it was at the suggestion of her gerontologist that I look at the village model or look at the village in order to try to get some greater socialization for her. And lo and behold, there was the position of executive director open at the time. So my mother became a member and I applied for the job. And luckily I got it. And my mother is still with us. We're a 3-generation household. Unfortunately, she now has Alzheimer's pretty actively for the last 4 years. And she's coming up on 94, but she's still with us and she's still there, albeit differently. But so I have a real passion for serving those with dementia and figuring out how we can weave them into the village model as well. That said, mom is my priority. So I always like to say she's my first job and the village is my second. And I think that's probably true and something I'm proud of. But it's a little bit of a background and sort of history that sort of, or context to help understand why, for me, I'm so passionate about these Sunday suppers, which I'll now transition to talk about. And I'm just going to quickly share my screen and give you the slide presentation. The Sunday suppers are monthly on the second Sunday of every month at a nearby church, All Souls Episcopal Church. And we partner with the church for a real non-denominational supper. It's not a religious event at all. There is a non-denominational blessing done by the rector before the meals, but it's not meant to be anything other than a gathering for folks in the community. So we had some goals that were really important to us that sort of enabled us to focus on what we wanted to achieve. That was, we wanted to increase social connection. We all know, from the Surgeon General and others that social isolation is an epidemic with real health outcomes, unfortunately, for our older adults. And so we wanted to do something about that, and we did some focus groups for our village's strategic plan. And we learned some interesting things. And one of the things that we learned was that people who tend to live alone are often feeling isolated and lonely on Sundays at a time when, at least in my big Italian family, when we used to get together, when we all lived near each other, Sundays were sort of a family time. Well, that was true for others as well. And so we looked at our calendar and we realized we hadn't done much on Sundays in the past. Most of our activities are during the week. And so we thought, gee, this is a great opportunity to bring people together on a day when perhaps they're really needing it. And so luckily the church lower level was sorry about that, was empty that day, and so it worked out for us to be there on Sunday afternoons. The second reason why we wanted to put this program together was that unfortunately DC is 48th in the nation in terms of senior hunger. And so we thought, gee, let's sort of build community, but also give them food for those that may be lacking otherwise. And, you know, it's not because people necessarily can't afford food, although that is a big reason for many, but it's also because they no longer have the ability to cook food or to access the food that they need. And so we thought, well, we can at least give them one good meal and then also maybe some leftover doggy bags. But more importantly, I shouldn't say more importantly, but equally as important, we wanted to build community. And again, going back to my Italian roots, you know, you only do that around food, or many of us do, whatever background we have. And so we thought, gee, this really makes sense. So that was the impetus for pulling this particular program together. The way it has worked is that our village, like other villages in DC, there are 13 villages in DC, we received some funding from the Washington Home Foundation specifically to address social isolation and senior hunger. And so we took some of that money and the church, All Souls Episcopal, actually wrote a grant, which I helped review, for the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, which they received. And so we married the two grant sources and decided that we could put on enough dinners for a year. So our attempt is to invite any older adult in the community that wants to attend. They're not just members. Some of our members do go, but it's also a lot of people that just hear about them. In particular, we've done some outreach. I should say the church in particular has done some outreach to a group home for adults with developmental disabilities, which is really just 2 buildings away from the parish. And so they've done a lot of outreach, and we're consistently joined by 2 to 5 members of that house at these dinners. We have also done some outreach, which I'll talk about in a minute, to try to bring in previously unhoused individuals that through the mayor's program in DC to provide housing in our area through a robust voucher program. We know that there are people that were previously unhoused who are literally dropped into a neighborhood that they don't know. And so we were particularly concerned that they would be even more socially isolated than others. And so we wanted to do some outreach to them as well. So it's really a really quite diverse community that attends. And I should say, many of them also come from other parts of the city. And word sort of gets around and people tell their friends and then others join us. And so it's a slightly different crowd each week or each month that we have it, but it's always a great time. We promote the dinners through the church website and their weekly Sunday bulletin. We have a weekly electronic newsletter, the Village News. And then in Cleveland Park, we have this incredible community listserv that goes to over 12,000 individuals. And but in addition to that, and where I think we get the most traction is we have developed in our village what we call apartment ambassadors. And these are either volunteers or members that live in large apartment buildings that have agreed to accept a package from us that we put together here in the office once a month. And that package has flyers, a written newsletter, any sort of publicity about events that would be of interest to the community and open to the community. and those ambassadors post them in the laundry room. So the idea is while you're waiting for your spin cycle, you're sitting there reading something of interest and in our newsletter or looking at a flyer. And we always include both a phone number and a web address or a URL. And that's really important because we know that not everyone has access to the internet. Most do, but not everybody. So I think that that's really where we've gotten most of our traction in terms of people finding out about the Sunday suppers and coming. Another important part of our model is to partner with local restaurants. So we pay them with our grant funding to provide sort of bulk meals. So I always tell them this is a little different. I'm not ordering 50, individual servings, and we pay for about 40 to 45 because the portions are pretty generous, and we found that most people don't eat that much as a standard restaurant portion. And so, like last month we had Fat Pete's barbecue, and so we had pulled chicken barbecue, collard greens, and macaroni and cheese, and then they just provided it in big bins, which then we portion out and plate for the folks. I should say one of the challenges has always been making sure that we have a gluten-free option, a vegetarian option. We always want to make sure that we understand people's dietary needs and we accommodate everyone. Another challenge would be making sure that the meals are affordable. We like to make sure that the restaurants are not losing money. In fact, we still want them to make money. Maybe not as much, but we want them to make something from it. And we want to be seen as a good community partner, not just with our hands out asking for money, but actually helping, because some of those restaurants are really struggling. We use a volunteer corps to do everything from setting up the tables, putting tablecloths on, utensils. We're blessed that the church has this amazing kitchen set up with china and utensils and everything you could imagine in the kitchen. And so we have volunteers do everything that it takes to plate the food, and then most importantly, to engage the participants in conversation. And that's a real thing that I have always emphasized when we have our little team huddle at the beginning. It's not just giving people a plate of food, but it's actually sitting with them. And so we reserve a spot at every table with a little sign that says reserved for your server. And then we ask them to facilitate the conversation so that everybody gets a chance to participate and feel like they're engaging in the conversation. A particular challenge here is that it takes about 11 people to serve the 50 people that are there. And that's a lot to get even though we partner with the church, for some of the volunteers, it's still a lot for both organizations to consistently come up with 11 or 12 people to do this each month. The last part of our model that I'll talk about is we always present some educational program, or at least have the materials available that we think are relevant to the participants. And so in the past, we've done things, for example, on scams. And I will, in my opening talk, which is very brief because they all want to get, to the appetizers, I'll talk about, the fact, for example, if we're talking about scams, that $3.4 billion is lost in scams by older adults every year. And the average scam is about $34,000. And that sort of wakes people up when you give them those brief little sound bites. And then you say, and in the back, I have 7 different articles for you that will help you recognize scams, including one from, the Federal Trade Commission or Federal Communications Commission on the latest scams. You got to make it really relevant to them, and then they consume that material. And I like to think that, it makes a difference. but I found that it's really helpful to have a particular theme, not just like, oh, here are all the resources that you could possibly want, and it's too overwhelming. So in addition to scams, for example, I've done one on food insecurity. That was last month, and I showed them where all of the dining sites were, and I told them when they could go there, who was eligible, as well as food pantries, and other types of grocery programs offered through various agencies through the city and privately. But I put together a one pager front and back, which listed all of those things. And because people were coming there for a meal, which was free, it was pretty popular that people then started taking other of these materials on food resources. So each month we serve 50 people. I can't really say what the most popular food has been. They've all been pretty interesting. Um, I will say I can tell you the least popular was actually uh, the highest end restaurant that we have. And it was because the food was too spicy, which I've learned. I love spice, but not everyone does. And so what I would consider not very spicy, others, think that it's, a mouthful of flavor. So it was too much. So it's interesting. It's not necessarily the cost of the food that people go for. Um, but it is nice that they're able to um, taste the food of the restaurants nearby that otherwise perhaps they wouldn't be able to go to. Um, we really feel, both organizations, that we're living our mission by serving older adults. It helps us in the village sort of combat the perception perhaps that we're an exclusionary membership-based organization, even though we provide 30% of our memberships as free memberships to those who qualify. There's still the perception when you say you're a membership organization that you're exclusionary. So it's nice to be able to offer these free programs along with, we have a free concert series in the summer where we do 4 or 5 concerts. So if you marry those together, they're constantly hearing from us about programs open to the whole community. So that's been really nice. And I know that we're reaching people that we've never served before. Some of those people have actually become members. Some are now on a list because they live in areas of the city that don't have a village. And so we're reaching out to them to see if they have an interest in starting a village in their particular area. So we work very closely with the executive director of the DC Villages Collaborative. And overall, I think it's just been a real success. And we're looking now for funding to continue this in the new year. The church's funding is going to be expended by the end of the year, and ours will as well. And it costs us anywhere, I should say, just to be real specific, anywhere from $600 per supper to as much as $1,200, depending on the restaurant and what we're serving. And so it sort of evens out that we were able with $10,000 to do 12 of these suppers. Here are the other partners. It's not just me, although I am at most every one of these, but that's really by choice. But it's been really important for us to partner with the church community, and they identify somebody each time to open the church and close the church, so that they make sure that it's all safe and that we're meeting the cleaning standards and things, because they use the kitchen for other purposes. And we alternate who is going to be the lead. So it's either the village or the church. And I tend to provide the logistics, setting up the logistics with the various restaurants. but that could be shared as well. So with that, I will quit sharing my screen and I will be happy to answer questions or chat about any part of it in particular that may be of interest.
Thank you very much. Kim, did I see you raising your hand right
I
away?
do. I have a question.
Okay.
I was curious how you handle RSVPs or registrations for this, and if you have waiting lists and how you handle that.
Yeah, so we do ask people to register either by calling or by going on our website, and we use Helpful Village. So we just set it up as an event. It's taken a little bit of finessing because I always get people that don't register and come, and people that register and don't come. And so I now, I think the magic number is if I want 50 people there, I allow 55 to sign up. And it sort of works out. I mean, we're in a church, so, we also say, loaves and fishes will prevail and we'll make do with whatever whatever happens. There have been times when the salads have been a little bit smaller than anticipated because we have more people, and then there have been other times when we really did have a lot of leftover lasagna that we were asking people to take. But 55 seems to be the number that we strive to get ahead of time, and then it sort of works out that we get around 50 people.
Denise.
Well, I have two questions. The first is percentage or number wise, how many of the 50 are your members versus folks from the community?
I would say between 15 and 20 are members. But what's interesting to me is that I have seen members that don't participate in other things, but they do come to the Sunday suppers. And so I like that. I like to do a variety of activities for folks because I know certain things appeal to others. But I was surprised at the number of people that I hadn't seen participate. And now I'm actually getting couples to come together, where I never see the husband in the couple. Now I'm seeing that that they're coming as a couple and they're joining other couples, which is kind of nice to see. But between 15 and 20 per of members per supper is my guess.
My second question is, do you have any additional insurance to cover this? Is the church concerned about liability? Are you concerned? Somebody gets food poisoning, whatever.
Yeah, we don't have any extra insurance. We don't serve alcohol. That was one key thing that we decided. But people do ask for wine or beer, but we opted not to do that. But now I'm frightened because I haven't looked at our liability insurance, but it hasn't come up. It's one reason why we don't make the food. I will say that we want to make sure that it's catered. But beyond that, I haven't really delved into that yet. Hopefully never to do so.
Arkia.
I don't really have a question. I just want to, I just have a comment. When I saw your presentation, Frank, a couple of months ago through Wave, your second Sunday supper really resonated with me. In my community, we are food desert as well. And, I think food always brings people together. I agree with that. And so I actually wrote a grant through the state of Maryland to start second Sunday dinners in Turner Station off of your idea.
Great.
So thank you. This session has been really helpful of the additional information you provided, and we're going to start in October. And we're kind of doing it, we don't have like a real, I guess, partner for a venue. I'm kind of like rotating it around the community. So there's a couple of churches. We have a community center. I reached out to our senior center. So I'm really trying to, figure out where, we don't have a one main spot, but, my hope is that it grows and, we, can make it bigger. But, I just want to thank you for doing this initiative and sharing what you've done, because it's, helping another community.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. That means a lot that we've spurred that action, and other people are getting together around meals, and that's really fantastic.
And Denise, again.
Yes, I could probably come up with 16 questions. How does the food get from the restaurant to the church, Frank? Do you guys pick it up, or does the restaurant deliver?
We've had both, but the only time the restaurant has delivered is there's a restaurant that's literally across the alley. And so it was easier for them to just deliver it, and they've done lots of events at the church. That was our Thanksgiving meal that we did, which we did before Thanksgiving, which we were a little bit nervous, by the way, that people would feel like it was too much turkey. But for some people, they told us that that was going to be their Thanksgiving dinner, that they didn't want to have to cook, so they were enjoying that the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So that restaurant delivered. Otherwise, we always pick up the food at 4:30, and we ask the restaurant to keep it hot. When we had pizza, we picked it up at 4:45, and we always start serving at 5. The other thing I'll tell you is people always show up early. It's unbelievable to me. But like you say, 5 o'clock is the start time. And, I've had people show up literally at 4:15. And I'm like, I haven't even gone to get the food yet. They want to be there. So anyway, we tend to pick up the food and deliver. I will say, I mentioned the pizza. So in August, we did a pizza party because a lot of people were going on vacation. And so we didn't have a lot of volunteers. And so I thought, well, I want to keep doing it every month because I think there's something to the continuity. It builds when you know that it's always going to happen, regardless of, what's going on, be it summer or the holidays or something. Nope, it's the second Sunday. And so we decided to make it a buffet and to use paper plates and plastic utensils for those that use that for pizza. And while people like the pizza, I will say they really didn't like the buffet, and they hated the paper plates and plastic utensils. There was something about they got to go to a dinner where they were served on china. Ceramic. I mean, it's not high-end china, but it's nice. And so that was a real surprise to me that people would care about that, but they did. We still had a good time. We managed with only 5 volunteers instead of our usual 11 or 12, and everyone got delicious pizza and some pizza to take home. But there was some learning there.
Frank, I have a question about access, not necessarily in the sense of handicapped access, but literally, since you are drawing people from wider in the community, do you play any role in their transportation to the meals?
We don't. We have not done that yet. Luckily, the church is very close to the metro, and a lot of the folks that come are from the Connecticut Avenue corridor, where we have the communications in the apartment buildings. So it's very easy for them to walk down the avenue and come. But that's a good point. I mean, in the future, we could potentially get some folks from the community that need transportation. We do get requests from members for transportation, and we're able to provide that. But we haven't. I don't think we've even received any requests for transportation from non-members, although we haven't advertised that we provide it, so maybe that's why they don't ask.
And I'll just ask again, and of the average of 50 that you serve, how many regulars do you have? Where like almost every month?
Almost every month, I would say 10 people, or almost every month. And I also want to say, of those 10, maybe only 1 or 2 are village members. I think the majority of them are not.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting too, because I'm thinking of one couple and I keep talking to them appropriately about village membership because they've expressed interest in the past and things. I don't really try to sell the village membership there, but I've chatted with them. And, I don't know, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot a little bit because they say, well, we just love coming here and this seems to be enough.
Thank you.
But
Well,
that's
I guess
okay.
I'd ask, do you have a sliding scale for dues? I mean, I don't know what your dues level is for full members, but how do you accommodate different levels?
So we have 2 levels of fees: $300 per household for social membership. They don't receive any volunteer support. And then what we have is, some people call full members, we call them members plus, and that's $575 an individual and $875 for a couple per year, or a household per year, up to 3 people in the household. We actually have membership subsidies that are really free memberships. So right now, technically, we have well, 30% of our members plus receive a free membership. And next week, I believe we're going to have 20 social memberships offered as free memberships when our board meets. I fully anticipate that they will adopt that new policy. And that's a direct result of wanting to reduce social isolation and loneliness. And we want to make sure that finances are not the reason why people aren't joining us. We seek grants to pay those membership fees, and do private fundraising as well. I will say, in addition to all of that, and this is something I'm really passionate about too, not only do we provide the subsidies, the free memberships, if you will, but we also tell them, it's a very confidential conversation with just me, and nobody else knows other than staff. So the board doesn't know. They know the number, but they don't know who is receiving them. And then in addition, we have a small fund that we've established of about $1,000 a year, where we will pay a subsidized member's entrance fee or any other fee where other members are asked to pay. So if we go to one of the rare museums in DC that charges a fee, then and the members pay themselves usually, then we will work it out in advance with the subsidized member, and we actually provide them with cash so that they can pay themselves, and we respect their dignity, and no one else knows that they're using cash from the village in order to pay. And so I think that's really important, not just to open the doors, but then say, you can go to anything anyone else goes to.
Very good. Very good. Other questions?
I don't have a question at this point, although I may when I think about this more, but I wanted to thank you because this is it was a wonderful idea. And I have found that trying to get things going again, social events after COVID, I kind of joined a little after COVID, trying to get that going again has been challenging. But what a lot of members will come to and attend and are highly attended revolves around food, right? So monthly lunch rounds where you meet at a restaurant. We have a big turnout, and our president sometimes has people over to his home for lunch that he provides. Huge turnout. So this is just another opportunity for us to encourage more members to get out and socialize, and also reach those other members in the community, like you said, that we want to reach, that we just haven't been able to. So thank you for this idea, and I'm going to present it to the board on Thursday when we meet. And I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful idea. And thanks for all that you're doing there.
Great, thank you. Let me know. I'd love to know if you all implement it. That'd be lots of fun.
I will. Thank you.
Terry, I love your cat's participation. We see the tail as it walks by.
Yeah. Yes.
They're
She
very
likes, she
tiny.
doesn't like to be excluded. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Frank, I'll tell you that I too, I don't know if I came up with it, but because you've been doing this for a while, but I too like the second Sunday supper idea. And I was thinking of offering it literally in my home
Mm.
with, you know, obviously a certain quantity ceiling there. And then per my question to you before everybody else joined about participatory singing, part of me wants to make this the second Sunday supper and sing along gathering, but it's going to take some planning and some, you know, sort of getting folks ready for it, for that to happen. But I do agree that sense of a regular time for people to gather is very good, and you've clearly achieved you know, very impressive and inspiring degree of outreach and inclusion there. That's wonderful.
I will tell you one quick learning regarding music. A group that a duo that wanted to come and play some Celtic music, which was great, except for afterwards. And I let them know beforehand, like, it's really got to be background. This isn't a concert. But we got complaints because people couldn't hear across the table with the music in the background. So we haven't done that since. But I think that if it were, you know, at a time like you have dinner, you know, and then afterwards you had another time for a musical event, a short one, then it might work better than doing it simultaneously, which, you know,
Yes.
we didn't know until we tried it.
And optional, people can go home if they want to.
Right.
That's it. I think IKEA was next.
Yeah, I was going to talk to the music piece, because I do think, you know, music is important too. And, you know, for my Sunday dinners, I am going to have some like very low background music because I want people to talk. But last night, for my Girl Scout meeting, I had an intergenerational Motown bingo. And so we played all Motown music, and it was, I mean, it was loud, but it was so much fun. People were like singing along. So, you know, I think Mary Jo, you have something there with the singing, because people had a blast last night, and they were just, you know, just gave them a sense of reminiscing, and even the young kids, you know, getting familiar with those songs. So, you know, I think music is definitely a good piece to add.
Absolutely. Coincidentally, when Mary Jo asked me earlier about if we had a sing along, I said not really, although it happened a little bit, you know, spontaneously, but it did so at a Motown concert. Everyone
Wow.
knew all the songs, and they were teaching their kids. It was a real intergenerational activity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
I think actually that's a very good point, come to think of it, because I grew up in a family that did sing-along, but it was partly because my father had been in the war and he stayed in the Army Reserve, so the Army folks would come over, and it happened that the Army band leader was in you know, there. So I mean, you know, sing-alongs, and so we have I have to say he was a general. We have the General Jim songbook. And I gave a celebration of life party just this past Saturday for my friend and partner of 20 years. And he used to love our sing-alongs. He was a singer from way back. So we did a sing-along at the end of his celebration of life. But I have to laugh because in the past, I've given sing-alongs. I mean, over the past years, even 10 years. And I have younger friends too. And one of them finally said to me, Mary Jo, don't you have any music that goes beyond World War II? So it occurred to me, you know, that you're going to need to find the right package to be able to meet different needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Denise?
Yeah, Frank, I was just wondering when you started this, how many people did you have coming? What's been the growth curve, I guess?
I think the fewest we had was 43 people, and the highest has been, I think, 54. So it hasn't been a huge, you know, difference. I actually think the attendance is more dependent upon the weather than anything else. You know, I think the lowest point was just a bad storm that day, and people didn't want to go out, and so they just didn't show.
Mhm. Mm. Wow.
More doggy bags.
Right, exactly. We were
Yeah,
giving away lots of lasagna that day.
yeah. Lasagna is sort of hard to put into a doggy bag, though.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was interesting too. By the way, I always ask the restaurants to provide some takeout containers.
Oh, good. Mhm.
And then someone on the listserv actually once asked me if we needed any containers, and I stupidly said yes. And so now every 6 weeks I get like bags of containers dropped off at my house, uh, anonymously, so I can't get it to stop. But anyway, people always have takeout containers, but I put them through the dishwasher before using them. But you can certainly sort of get your volunteers to donate them and whatnot. But it's nice to be able to give some of those folks that doggy bag so that they have another meal.
Well, I want to ask Terry and Denise now, do you think you'll start an event sort of like this? How, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being probably not and 5 being probably, where are you on the scale of thinking about maybe starting something like this?
Well, it's
Mhm.
not up to me. I'm just one board member, but I will certainly sell this hard on Thursday. And I don't know why anyone would not think this would be a great idea, just kind of putting it all together and finding the funds and the church and so forth. But I think it's a wonderful idea, so I'm going to sell it hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm planning on approaching, our office is in an Episcopal church, to be specific. And they're wonderful landlords to us, and I'm planning on approaching them and asking them about it. I think my board would be happy to have us do it, because we're looking at doing a lot of outreach this year, and I think this could be a good way to catch people. And if they become members or not, but as Frank has said, we're still providing a service and getting our name out there, and that's important in its own right. It might not be the person who comes to the supper, but maybe somebody else in the building, sees the name and thinks I could use them.
Now, do you see a way, Frank, that your Episcopal contacts that Denise could learn a little bit extra from you about, how All Souls managed this? Because it's Episcopal, didn't you say? It's the Episcopal diocese that they have a small grant from?
Yeah, it was from the diocese. And so I'm sure that the contact, Kevin LeGrand, who's at the parish, as that he was the senior warden, he wrote it. So I'm sure he would talk to the folks there at your parish, Denise, and share it. And maybe, I know it was one-time funding, but I don't know if that the diocese was only offering that RFP for that 1 year, or if once you get it, you can't get it again. I just don't know, but I'm sure Kevin would be able to assist with that and see if the church could get that grant from the diocese. I think it speaks volumes to the fact that we've been so successful, that if you could point to that and say they did it in Woodley Park, could we do it here in Foggy Bottom? That might work.
At least it's all the DC diocese, so it's not like you're going into other
Right.
church jurisdictions, right? Anyone else? Any
I
other-
just had one more question about the volunteers. Frank, you mentioned that you have 11 or 12 volunteers every month that make this work. I was just curious, are they primarily village and or church volunteers? Do you get volunteers from any other sources or?
They primarily are. We had for a couple of them some teens that wanted community service hours, and that was great because one of them was very outgoing and she loved to sit and talk with the people at the table. The other one was a little more reserved, and they were sisters, and so she was happy to plate food in the kitchen, but that was fine. I let them know that they didn't have to do anything they didn't want to do, and be in uncomfortable roles or something. So the challenge was scheduling that, once the school season ramped up, and then, I don't know if it was dance or choir practice or something. And so that hasn't worked out since the initial time that or the few times that they've done it. I would be open to more participation by the community. It is really tough. I mean, some weeks before the supper, I'm on the phone, or a member of my staff are on the phone trying to convince people, can you come and help out? It's really actually quite quick, I should say. We start promptly at 5. People do arrive a little bit early. We always have an appetizer already on the table so that people can nibble. And we have water pitchers on the table with glasses. And then we have coffee and iced tea available. And then really by 5:20, we're serving. And I want to say we're pretty much always out of there having cleaned up everything by 6:45. It's really kind of amazing. And that's not kicking people out. That's just sort of like the natural time frame that seems to happen. So if that helps for planning purposes, it's kind of been nice to say to our volunteers, this is only 2.5 hours. And if you're not having dinner with us, you can have dinner afterwards, if they're in the kitchen just serving and not sitting with the people and dining. So
Arkia, you also are a Girl Scout leader. Can you see any partnerships or any collaboration between your Girl Scout work and say an event like this?
Oh yeah, I've already mentioned it at my meeting last night. I've already
Okay.
told the parents the first one's October, and I would love to see some of the girls
Oh, good.
out to, especially, from our intergenerational work we're already doing. Some of the older adults now know these girls because they've come to a couple of events. And so, I'm always trying to find service projects for them. So helping them serve and, yeah, it's, yeah, they'll definitely be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it's too bad. I suspect that the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts do not necessarily look in the same directions for their.
Oh, our Cub Scouts are involved too. I have a really good relationship with the Scout leader in Turner Station. So they were at our bingo last night, and they're open to coming to help on Sundays as well.
Very good, very good. Okay, anything else finally? Well, I want to just thank you, Frank. You have sparked a really great conversation, some great ideas around a beautiful project that seems beautifully executed. So congratulations. And by the way, folks, they won a prize in our Founders Award. And
great.
it's close. And so we're very pleased to have given you this opportunity to share it all and are happy that it will be recorded and on our. And we will be sending out a notice when it's posted on the website, and tell other people that if they want to watch and listen and learn, they can see it on our website. Thank
Thank
you
you
again.
so much.